Now, let's begin. Benjamin Tyler stood at the edge of the gathering, watching the mahogany casket being lowered into the ground. The October wind carried the smell of turned earth and dying leaves. His hands stayed steady at his sides, though inside he felt hollowed out, scraped clean of everything that had made him human just 3 days ago. His son was 14 years old. That word was felt like swallowing glass. Kevin had been found in his bedroom. They said heart failure. Sudden, unexpected, tragic. The Post family doctor, Whitney's uncle, had signed the death certificate within hours. Natural causes. These things happen. Rare genetic conditions. Nothing anyone could have predicted. The funeral home had strongly recommended a closed casket. The body had been handled. Everything had moved with a bureaucratic efficiency that felt almost choreographed. Benjamin had built his career as a philosophy professor on questioning assumptions, on finding cracks in seemingly solid arguments. But grief, he discovered, had a way of dulling even the sharpest mind. He had moved through the past 72 hours in a fog, signing papers, nodding at condolences, while Whitney's family, the Posts, had managed everything. They swooped in like well-meaning vultures, handling arrangements, making decisions, offering support that felt more like suffocation. Benjamin, his father-in-law's voice cut through his thoughts. Don Post stood beside him, a silver-haired man with the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. The reception is starting. People will want to pay their respects. Whitney appeared at Benjamin's other side, her face pale beneath her black veil, eyes red-rimmed, but dry. She had cried yesterday. Today she seemed somewhere else entirely, moving through the motions, with mechanical precision. Her mother, Charlene, and her brother, Chad, flanked her like sentries. Benjamin nodded slowly, turning toward the small chapel where the reception would be held. That was when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He almost ignored it. What call or message could possibly matter now? But something instinct, paranoia. The part of him that still functioned made him pull it out. The number made his breath catch. Kevin's number. The phone they had found in his bedroom, powered off. Supposedly dead, along with its owner. His hands trembled as he opened the message. It's dark in here, but I'm not underground. Asterisk. The world tilted. Benjamin's vision tunneled, sound fading to a distant roar. He read it again and again. Benjamin. Whitney's voice sounded far away. Are you all right? He looked up at her, then at Don Post, who was watching him with peculiar intensity. The old man's jaw was tight, his shoulders rigid. Benjamin's fingers moved before conscious thought caught up. He typed, "Who is this?" The response came within seconds. "Don't trust anyone. Please check the casket." The words unlocked something in him. Not grief now, but fury, cold and bright as a winter star. Every inconsistency of the past 3 days suddenly snapped into focus. The rushed death certificate, the closed casket, the way the Posts had controlled every detail. Whitney's strange detachment, the funeral home they had chosen, 40 miles away, run by Don's old military. Buddy. Benjamin raised his eyes and looked directly at Don Post. The older man's face had gone carefully blank, but his hand had moved to his wife Charlene's elbow, gripping it tight. "I need a moment," Benjamin said, his voice steady in a way that surprised even him. "Alone." "Benjamin," the reception Whitney started. Something in his tone made her step back. Benjamin walked past them, past the small crowd of mourners still lingering near the grave, past the funeral director who tried to intercept him with practiced condolences. He walked straight to the grave. The casket sat at the bottom, pristine and still. 2 cemetery workers stood nearby, waiting to fill in the earth. Benjamin looked at them, then at the small crowd that had started to notice his movement. "Open it," he said. The workers exchanged glances. "Sir, I don't think open it." "Benjamin, please." Whitney had followed him, her family right behind. Her voice cracked. "Don't do this. Don't make this harder." He turned to face her, and she flinched at whatever she saw in his eyes. How long have you been lying to me? What? I don't. The casket. Open it, or I will. Don Post stepped forward, his face flushed. Son, you're in shock. This is grief talking. Let's go inside, have some coffee, talk this through. Get away from me. Benjamin's voice dropped to something dangerous. I'm going to see my son, and if anyone tries to stop me, I will burn your entire world down. The cemetery workers, sensing the situation spiraling, looked at each other and nodded. One descended into the grave with a pry bar. The sealed casket wasn't meant to be opened. That was the whole point of embalming and preservation. But Benjamin had taught philosophy long enough to know that rules were just agreements people made, and agreements could be broken. The seal cracked. The lid lifted. Bags of sand stared back at him. Dozens of them, carefully arranged to approximate weight and shape. No body, no son. Just evidence of a lie so monstrous that for a moment Benjamin couldn't process it. Behind him, someone gasped. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Benjamin climbed down into the grave, his dress shoes sinking into the earth, and lifted one of the bags. It was the kind used for construction, stamped with a local supplier's logo. When he climbed back up, Don Post had gone white. Charlene clutched her husband's arm, and Chad Whitney's brother, thick-necked and perpetually aggressive, had taken 2 steps back. But it was Whitney's face that Benjamin focused on. She stood frozen, her mouth open, tears finally streaming down her face. Where is he? Benjamin's voice was quiet now, more terrible for its calm. Where is my son? We don't, Whitney stammered. This doesn't make sense. You knew. It wasn't a question. All of you knew. Benjamin, I swear, I thought he was Whitney, reached for him, but Benjamin stepped back. The text, he said, pulling out his phone and showing her the screen. From Kevin's number. He's alive, and he's telling me not to trust anyone. He looked at each of the posts in turn, especially not you. Don Post's mask finally cracked. The genial patriarch disappeared, replaced by something harder, colder. You need to think very carefully about what you do next, he said softly. There are things you don't understand. Things that are bigger than your feelings. Is that a threat? It's a fact. Don straightened his jacket. Kevin is safe. He's being taken care of. And you're going to walk away from this. Benjamin felt something crystallize inside him, all the confusion and grief hardening into diamond-sharp clarity. No, he said. I'm not. You don't have a choice. There's always a choice. Benjamin looked at Whitney, who was openly sobbing now. Did you love him at all? Our son. Of course Then tell me where he is. She shook her head, torn between her husband and her family. Chad Post moved closer to her, protective, possessive. Don pulled out his phone, typing something quickly. You just made a very bad decision, Don said. Come on, Whitney, we're leaving. You're not taking her anywhere, Benjamin said. 3 men emerged from the chapel, large and professional, with the bearing of private security. They moved to flank the posts. Don smiled without warmth. This is private property, Tyler. You're causing a disturbance. These gentlemen will escort you out, if necessary. Benjamin looked at the crowd of mourners, at the cemetery workers, at the evidence of his son's staged death. He could fight now, make a scene, maybe get himself arrested. Or he could be smart. He thought of Kevin, somewhere in the dark, afraid, but alive enough to send a warning. His son needed him tactical, not emotional. I'll go, Benjamin said, but I want you to understand something. He met Don Post's eyes. I'm going to find him, and when I do, I'm going to learn exactly what you've done. Then I'm going to destroy you so thoroughly that your family name becomes a cautionary tale. Big words from a college professor, Chad Post sneered. Benjamin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. I've spent 20 years teaching people how to think. how to deconstruct arguments, find weaknesses, exploit flaws in logic. You just made the mistake of giving me a puzzle to solve, and I'm very, very good at puzzles. He turned and walked away, ignoring the security guards, ignoring the shocked murmurs of the crowd. His phone buzzed again as he reached his car. Kevin's number. Dad, they're moving me tonight. Blue building, 2 floors, iron fence. Hurry. Then, seconds later, they found the phone. I love you. Nothing more. Benjamin didn't go home. Home was compromised, filled with Whitney's things, her family's influence, their carefully constructed lies. Instead, he drove to his office at the university, unlocked his door, and sat down at his desk. His hands were finally shaking now, the adrenaline of confrontation giving way to the magnitude of what he had discovered. Kevin was alive. His wife's family had staged his death. They had security, resources, planning. This wasn't improvised. This was organized. Why? That was the question that would lead him to answers. Philosophy had taught him that understanding motive was the key to predicting behavior. What did the Posts want? What did they gain from faking Kevin's death? His computer hummed to life. Benjamin pulled up every document he had on the Post family, the background checks he'd never bothered to run before marrying Whitney, the public records, the social media presence. He should have done this years ago, but he'd been in love, and Whitney had seemed different from her family, or so he had thought. Dan Post. Military background, honorably discharged. Ran a private consulting firm specializing in security solutions for overseas clients. Vague, deliberately so. Charlene Post, formerly Charlene Riss, married to Don for 35 years. No employment history. Chad Post worked for his father's firm. Also vague. Multiple overseas trips each year. The firm. That was where he needed to start. A knock on his door made him look up. Diane Bradford stood in the doorway, a colleague from the psychology department. She was 10 years older than Benjamin, sharp-eyed and brilliant. One of the few people at the university he genuinely respected. I heard what happened, she said quietly. At a funeral, news travels fast. Campus security was friends with the cemetery security. She stepped inside and closed the door. Benjamin, what's going on? He showed her his phone. The texts from Kevin's number. My son is alive. My wife's family faked his death and took him somewhere. Diane absorbed this with the same analytical precision she brought to her research. Do you believe it's really Kevin texting you? Yes. Why would they do this? That's what I need to figure out. Benjamin turned his computer screen toward her. Don Post's consulting firm. Does it look legitimate to you? She studied it. No. The website is professionally made, but deliberately vague. No client testimonials, no specific services, listed just keywords, security, consultation, international solutions. This is a front for something. That's what I thought. Diane sat down across from him. What are you planning to do? Find my son, then make them pay for this. The police, likely compromised. Don has connections everywhere. And even if they weren't, by the time they investigated, Kevin could be anywhere. Benjamin's voice hardened. No, this requires precision. I need to find him fast, and I need to do it without tipping them off that I'm coming. You need help. I need information. He looked at her directly. Your research focuses on criminal psychology, family systems, abuse dynamics. If you were profiling the Posts based on what I've told you, what would you say? Diane considered. Organized crime family, or adjacent to it. The fake death suggests they're either hiding Kevin from someone or using him for something. Insurance fraud. No, too risky with the body substitution. Custody manipulation. Possible. Or, she paused. They're involved in something illegal that Kevin discovered, and this is containment. Benjamin felt ice form in his stomach. What kind of illegal? Given their international connections and the security firm cover, it could be anything. weapons trafficking, human trafficking, black market adoption. Diane met his eyes. Benjamin, if I'm right, these people are dangerous. They've already proven they're willing to fake a child's death. They won't hesitate to. I know. He cut her off. But he's my son, and he's alive. That changes everything. Then you need to be smart about this. No heroics. You gather intelligence, find leverage, and make them give him back. I'm open to suggestions. Diane pulled out her own laptop. Start with property records. If Don Post is running an operation, he needs infrastructure buildings, warehouses, properties registered under different names. We cross-reference as known associates, shell companies, anything that might lead to a physical location. They worked through the afternoon and into evening, Benjamin's office becoming a war room. By the time darkness fell, they had a list of 17 properties tied directly or indirectly to Don Post's network. One stood out, a former medical facility, 2 stories, registered to a defunct charity organization that Don had once served on the board of, located 40 miles north, isolated, with high fencing visible on satellite imagery. Blue building, 2 floors, iron fence, Benjamin said. That has to be it. You can't just storm in there. I'm not going to. I'm going to watch it, learn the patterns, see who comes and goes. He stood, grabbing his jacket, and then I'm going to get my son back. Benjamin. Diane caught his arm. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise I'll do whatever it takes. He left before she could argue further, driving through the night toward the address they'd found. The building sat behind a chain-link fence topped with razor wire, lights blazing in several windows. 2 SUVs were parked outside. As Benjamin watched from a distance, concealed in a grove of trees with a pair of binoculars Diane had lent him, he saw movement. Chad Post emerged from the building, talking on his phone. He looked agitated. Then a woman Benjamin didn't recognize joined him, young professional, carrying a medical bag. A medical bag. Benjamin's mind raced. Why would they need medical personnel? Unless Kevin was hurt, or unless his phone buzzed. Unknown number this time. Benjamin Tyler, we need to talk. Come to the address I'm sending. Come alone. I can help you, but time is running out. An address appeared. A diner, public, 30 minutes away. Benjamin stared at the message, then back at the building where his son might be held. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap. But he had taught critical thinking long enough to know that sometimes the obvious trap is exactly what it appears to be, and sometimes it's the only door forward. He started his car and drove toward the diner, his mind already working through scenarios, possibilities, strategies. The Posts thought they'd won. They thought staging Kevin's death would end the story. They were wrong. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. The diner was the kind of anonymous highway stop that existed everywhere and nowhere. Fluorescent bright and nearly empty at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Benjamin parked where he could see both entrances, his hand resting on the tire iron he'd taken from his trunk. Inside, a lone figure sat in a back booth. Ricky Melton, one of Don Post's security contractors. Benjamin recognized him from the funeral. The man waved him over with a tired gesture. Benjamin approached slowly, every sense alert. Ricky looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, a nervous energy that seemed out of place for someone in his profession. Tyler, sit. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't. Ricky pushed a folder across the table. But you should see this. Benjamin remained standing but opened the folder. Inside were photographed surveillance images of various people meeting with Don Post. Documents with official-looking seals. Bank transfer records showing large sums moving through offshore accounts. But it was the last set of photos that made his blood run cold. Children. Dozens of different children. Various ages, various backgrounds, all photographed in clinical settings, with identification numbers instead of names. And among them, mixed in with strangers' faces, He saw Kevin, not in one photo, but several, spanning back months. "What is this?" Benjamin's voice was barely a whisper. "Dawn Post isn't just running a security consulting firm," Ricky said. "He's running a procurement operation, black market adoption. Mostly high-end clients, wealthy people who want specific types of children. People who don't want to go through legal channels or can't pass background checks. He scouts kids, stages, situations to take them, and sells them to the highest bidder." The world tilted. Kevin, your son, wasn't supposed to be part of the inventory. But 6 months ago, he saw something he shouldn't have. Overheard a meeting at your house when Don and Whitney were talking about a new acquisition. Kevin's smart. He started asking questions, poking around. Don couldn't risk him talking. Ricky met Benjamin's eyes. So he convinced Whitney it was temporary, just until they could figure something out. But Don's not planning to return Kevin. He's already got a buyer lined up. Some tech billionaire in Singapore who wants a son to carry on his legacy. A son he can mold from adolescence. A son with the right look and intelligence level. Benjamin's hands clenched on the folder. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm not a child trafficker. I thought I was doing private security. By the time I figured out what the operation really was, I was in too deep. Don has leverage on me, on all of us who work for him." Ricky pulled out a thumb drive. "This is everything. Client lists, transaction records, locations of other facilities. It's enough to bring down the entire network, but it's not enough to save Kevin tonight." "What happens tonight?" "Transfer. 2 a.m. at the facility you probably already found. They're moving Kevin to a private airstrip, then out of the country. Once he's gone, you'll never find him." Benjamin checked his watch. 3.5 hours. Security Chad, 2 other guards, and Don himself. "They're nervous after your stunt at the cemetery. They know you're looking. They're going to move fast and disappear." Ricky slid the thumb drive across the table. "Take this to the FBI, to the media, to whoever you want. Destroy the posts. But if you want your son back alive, you have to move now. And you have to be willing to do things that will change who you are." "I'm already changed." Benjamin pocketed the thumb drive. "The person I was died in that cemetery when I saw sand instead of my son. What's left doesn't care about legal or illegal, right or wrong. What's left only cares about bringing Kevin home." Ricky nodded slowly. "There's a service entrance on the east side. Breaks in the patrol pattern at half-hour intervals. You'll have maybe 90 seconds to get inside undetected. And once I'm inside, that's up to you." Ricky stood, preparing to leave. But Tyler Dawn Post is a true believer. He thinks he's doing important work, filling market demand, helping wealthy people who deserve children. He won't give Kevin up without a fight. And Chad's worse. He likes the violence. Then they'll get one. Benjamin left the diner with the folder and thumb drive secured in his jacket. He had 3.5 hours to plan, to prepare, to become someone capable of infiltrating a guarded facility and extracting his son. By force, if necessary. He drove to a big box store still open late and bought supplies, dark clothing, a flashlight, zip ties, a can of spray paint, a lighter, a bottle of high-proof alcohol. Nothing overtly criminal, but together they formed the components of a plan taking shape in his mind. His phone buzzed as he loaded his purchases into the car. "Whitney, Benjamin, please come home. We need to talk. I can explain everything." He stared at the message, thought about his wife's face when the casket opened. The tears that might have been genuine or might have been guilt. Either way, she'd known. She'd watched him grieve. She'd let him believe their son was dead. He typed back, "You had your chance to talk. Now I'm going to get Kevin, and then I'm going to make sure none of you ever hurts another family again." Her response came quickly. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. My father will kill you. Please, just let me help fix this." "You can't fix this." You broke it. Stay away from me. He blocked her number and continued his preparations. By 1 a.m., Benjamin sat in his car 300 yards from the facility, dressed in black, supplies in a backpack, studying the building through binoculars. Lights blazed in several windows. He could see shadows moving inside, guards making rounds. The SUVs were still parked in front. No sign yet of additional vehicles that might indicate the transport was early. His mind was eerily calm, each thought precise and clear. He'd spent his career teaching others to think through problems methodically, to break down complex questions into manageable parts. This was no different. Just another puzzle with higher stakes. Objective: extract Kevin safely. Obstacles: multiple armed guards, limited time, unknown interior layout, resources, surprise, desperation, and the willingness to do whatever was necessary. At 1:27, he moved. The service entrance was exactly where Ricky had indicated, partially concealed behind an overgrown dumpster enclosure. Benjamin waited for the guard's patrol pattern to take him to the front of the building, then crossed the open ground in a low run. The door was locked, but poorly maintained. 3 firm kicks near the handle, and the frame splintered. Inside smelled of disinfectant and fear. Institutional hallways. Fluorescent lights. The building's bones still showing its former life as a medical facility. Benjamin moved quickly but carefully, checking each door. Storage closets. Empty offices. A kitchen area with signs of recent use. Then he heard voices from above the second floor. Chad's distinctive laugh, rough and cruel. Dawn's calmer tone, giving instructions. Benjamin found the stairs and climbed silently. At the top, a long hallway, with rooms on both sides. Light spilled from a room at the end. He moved toward it, pressed himself against the wall, and listened. Make sure the sedation is right. Can't have him waking up mid-flight. That was Dawn. The doctor already prepped it. Kid'll be out for 12 hours easy. Chad sounded bored. Still don't see why we can't just because the buyer wants him undamaged and functional. We deliver what's promised, or we don't get paid. This isn't complicated. Whatever. When's the transport? Hour and a half. Plenty of time. Benjamin processed this. They were ahead of schedule. Kevin was already sedated, or about to be. That changed things. He couldn't just grab his son and run. Not if Kevin couldn't walk. He needed a different approach. Moving quickly back down the hall, he found what he was looking for: a maintenance closet with cleaning supplies, including industrial-strength chemicals. He emptied the spray paint can into several rags, added the high-proof alcohol, and created makeshift smoke bombs. Not enough to cause a real fire, but enough to create confusion and trigger the smoke alarms. Then he pulled the fire alarm manually. The shriek split the night immediately. Shouts erupted from the lit room. Benjamin moved to a shadowed doorway and waited. Chad burst into the hallway first, gun drawn, looking for threats. Behind him came one of the other guards. They headed for the stairs toward the alarm panel below. Benjamin counted to 5. Then he moved. He entered the lit room low and fast. Inside, Kevin lay on a medical gurney, eyes closed, an IV in his arm. Pale, but breathing, alive. A live Don post stood by the window, phone in hand, calling for backup. He saw Benjamin, and his eyes went wide. You shouldn't have come here. Tyler, you shouldn't have taken my son. Don's hand moved toward a weapon on the desk, but Benjamin was faster, driven by months of suppressed rage. He closed the distance and struck Don across the face with the tire iron from his back waistband. The older man went down, blood streaming from his nose. Where's the buyer? Benjamin demanded, standing over him. Who's in Singapore? Don laughed, blood on his teeth. You think this ends with me? There are dozens of people involved. You can't stop this. Watch me. Benjamin secured Don's hands behind him with zip ties, gagged him with torn curtain fabric, and dragged him into a corner. Then he went to Kevin, checked his pulse and breathing. Strong, steady. The 4 bags showed sedative markers. Benjamin carefully removed the 4 and applied pressure to the injection site. "Kevin," he whispered, "I'm here. I'm getting you out." His son didn't respond, deep in chemical sleep. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Benjamin moved fast, positioning himself beside the door, tire iron ready. Chad entered first, aggressive and confident. "Dad," someone pulled the Benjamin struck his knee. A calculated blow that dropped Chad screaming. Another strike to the temple left him unconscious. The guard behind Chad tried to raise his weapon, but Benjamin was already moving, fueled by adrenaline and paternal fury. He disarmed the man with a strike to the wrist, then dropped him with a blow to the solar plexus. His philosophy students would have been shocked. The mild-mannered professor who taught ethics and clear thinking, now moving with violent efficiency. But Benjamin felt no contradiction. Ethics weren't abstract when your child was involved. Clear thinking meant doing what worked. He dragged Chad and the guard into the room and secured them with more zip ties. Don watched, hatred burning in his eyes. "You've ruined everything," Don hissed through the gag. "Years of work." "Good," Benjamin said. He went to Kevin and carefully lifted his son into his arms. Even at 14, Kevin wasn't too heavy for a man running on adrenaline. "You're going to prison, all of you, and those children you trafficked, they're going home." He carried Kevin toward the stairs. Behind him, Don Post raged against his restraints, but the sounds grew fainter as Benjamin descended. The fire alarm still wailed. Somewhere in the distance, he heard sirens, real ones. Someone had called 911. Good. By the time they arrived, he and Kevin would be gone, but the evidence would remain. The Post family would have a lot of explaining to do. Benjamin loaded Kevin carefully into the back seat of his car, secured him with the seatbelt, and drove away. Just as the first fire truck appeared on the horizon, his son was alive, safe. The rest could wait. Benjamin drove to a small hotel 2 towns over, paying cash and registering under a false name. He carried Kevin inside, laid him on one of the beds, and sat vigil as the sedative slowly wore off. Around 6 a.m., Kevin's eyes fluttered open. "Dad." Benjamin's vision blurred with tears he hadn't allowed himself to feel. "Hey buddy, I'm here." Kevin's face crumpled. "They told me you thought I was dead. They said they buried me, and you believed them." "I did," Benjamin said softly, "for about 20 minutes. Then you texted me." He took his son's hand. "You saved yourself, Kevin. That message led me right to you. I stole one of the guards' phones when they weren't looking. I only had a few seconds. I wasn't even sure it would work. It worked. You were smart and brave, and you did exactly what you needed to do." Benjamin smoothed Kevin's hair back. "Are you hurt? Did they just the sedatives?" And being scared, Kevin's voice shook. "Grandpa Donnie said he was selling me like I was a thing. And Mom was there when they took me. She cried, but she didn't stop them." Okay, Benjamin felt fresh rage. Cold and crystalline. Whitney. He'd married her, loved her, built a life with her, and she had betrayed that in the worst way possible. "I know," he said quietly, "and she's going to answer for that. They all are. What are we going to do? First, we're going to get you checked by a real doctor. Make sure you're okay. Then we're going to talk to the FBI." Benjamin pulled out the thumb drive Ricky had given him. "We have evidence that's going to destroy the Post family's entire operation. But before we do that, I need to know something. Do you understand that things are about to get complicated? Your mother could go to prison. So could your grandparents. Your uncle too. This will all become public. It will be messy, painful, and hard." Kevin met his father's eyes, and Benjamin saw something there that shattered him. His son had grown up in just a few days. He had seen darkness no child should ever have to face. "They took me from you, Dad," They made you bury sand and believe I was dead. They were going to sell me to a stranger across the ocean. I don't care what happens to them. Okay, then we're going to make this right. Benjamin's phone buzzed non-stop. Multiple messages from blocked numbers. From Whitney's phone. From numbers he didn't recognize. Threats, pleas, promises. The posts were scrambling, trying desperately to contain the damage. But it was already too late. Benjamin opened his laptop and sent the contents of the thumb drive to 3 different places. The FBI's tip line, an investigative journalism nonprofit that specialized in human trafficking, and a cybersecurity friend who knew how to make sure the data could never be suppressed or destroyed. Then he called. Diane Bradford. It's Benjamin. I have Kevin. We're safe, but I need your help coordinating with law enforcement. The evidence is already on its way to multiple agencies. This is going to explode within hours, and I need someone I trust handling the academic side of this. My job, my reputation, making sure this doesn't get buried. Already done, Diane said. The university president is a friend. I briefed him this morning on what you uncovered. He's horrified and fully supportive. Your position is secure. Thank you, Benjamin. I'm so glad Kevin is safe. Now finish this. He intended to. Okay, by noon, federal agents raided the facility where Benjamin had pulled Kevin out. They found Don, Chad, and the guards still restrained, along with medical records, financial documents, and enough evidence to launch a sweeping investigation. By evening, the story broke nationwide. Prominent security contractor arrested in massive child trafficking scheme. Whitney called Benjamin 17 times. He didn't answer once. When FBI agents finally located Benjamin and Kevin at their hotel, they found a father and son ready to tell their story, backed by irrefutable proof. The lead agent, a woman named Christy Sexton, listened to Kevin's account with professional compassion and growing horror. Mr. Tyler, what you did, forcibly extracting your son from that facility, puts us in a complicated legal position, she said carefully. I understand. Charge me if you have to. But first, use that evidence to save the other children. Agent Sexton studied him for a long moment, then nodded. We're already acting on it. The data you provided has opened up an entire network. We've identified at least 43 children trafficked through the post-operation over the past 7 years. Some are already reunited with their biological families. Others were still trying to locate Dot and Whitney. Kevin asked quietly. Your mother is currently being questioned. We're determining her level of involvement. Sexton's voice softened. I know this is hard, she knew, Kevin said. She helped them take me. She was crying, but she still did it. Then she faced the appropriate charges. The next 72 hours blurred together in a whirlwind of interviews, depositions, and relentless media coverage. The story was too big to contain. A wealthy family entangled in international adoption fraud and child trafficking. A father's desperate rescue of his son. The collapse of a network that had operated in the shadows for years. Benjamin gave one carefully prepared statement to the press. Standing outside the FBI field office beside Agent Sexton, my son was targeted by people he should have been able to trust. His own family. But he was brave enough to find a way to signal for help, and I was fortunate enough to hear that signal. I'm grateful to law enforcement for bringing the entire network down, and to everyone who supported us during this nightmare. Okay, behind him, inside the building, Don Post and Chad Post sat in separate interrogation rooms, their empire crumbling. Charlene Post had taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify against her husband in exchange for reduced charges, and Whitney had asked to see Benjamin. Against his lawyer's advice, he agreed. They met in a conference room, a federal agent standing by the door. Whitney looked haggard, as if she'd aged years in a single week. Her hand shook as she sat across from him. Benjamin, he raised a hand. I don't want to hear that you're sorry. I don't want to hear that you were conflicted or that your father manipulated you. You're an adult. You made choices, and those choices led to our son being kidnapped and nearly sold to a stranger. I thought it was temporary. Dad promised. Your father promised. Kevin is 14 years old. When were you planning to tell me the truth? When he was in Singapore? When he was permanently traumatized? Or never? Tears streamed down her face. I was scared. Dad said, if I didn't cooperate, they'd take Kevin anyway, and I'd never see him again. He said you'd never understand the business, that you were too sheltered, too idealistic. He said this was how the world really worked, and you believed him. Yes. Her voice cracked. And I was wrong. I destroyed everything. I destroyed our family. Benjamin looked at the woman he had married, the woman he once loved, and felt nothing but exhaustion. You're right. You did. Whatever happens to you now, prison, exile, whatever it is, you earned it. And I hope it haunts you forever, that you chose your father's criminal empire over your own son. Benjamin, please. Is there any chance now? Whatever we had died when you helped stage Kevin's death, I will never forgive you. Never. He stood and left, not looking back as Whitney collapsed into sobs behind him. The divorce papers were filed within the week. 3 months later, Benjamin and Kevin sat in their new apartment, starting over in a different city, far from the posts and the memories. Kevin was seeing a therapist twice a week, working through the trauma, slowly learning how to trust again. Benjamin had taken a leave of absence from teaching, focusing entirely on his son's recovery. Okay, the criminal trials were ongoing. Don Post faced multiple life sentences. Chad Post had taken a plea deal, 25 years minimum. Charlene received 15 years. Whitney, who cooperated extensively with prosecutors, was sentenced to 8 years, with the possibility of parole after 5. The network they exposed led to 63 children being recovered and returned to their families. 4 other trafficking rings were uncovered through connections found in Don's files. Agent Sexton called it one of the biggest busts in recent FBI history. But for Benjamin, the victory felt hollow. Kevin was safe. That was what mattered. And still, his son had nightmares. He flinched at sudden movements. He asked questions no 14-year-old should have to ask. About trust, about family, about whether anyone was ever truly safe. Dad. Kevin looked up from his homework one evening. Do you think I'll ever feel normal again? Benjamin set his book down and sat beside him. I don't know if we ever go back to how things were, but I think we build something new, something stronger, because now we know what we're capable of surviving. Are you glad you saved me, even though it destroyed everything else?
Benjamin turned his son to face him. You aren't everything else. You're everything. Your mother, her family, the house, the life we had, that was all just stuff around the edges. You're the center, and I would tear down 1,000 lives to keep you safe. Kevin hugged him tightly, desperate and unafraid. I love you, Dad. I love you too, buddy. That night, after Kevin was asleep, Benjamin sat on their small balcony and looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, the Posts were sitting in prison cells. Whitney was in a minimum security facility, and the families they had destroyed were trying to rebuild. He thought about the man he'd been 3 months earlier, a philosophy professor who believed in abstract justice, in systems and processes, in rational thought solving everything. That man had been naive, sheltered, unprepared for the reality of evil. The man he was now understood that sometimes justice required action, not theory. That protecting what mattered meant breaking rules, taking risks, becoming dangerous when necessary. His phone buzzed, a message from Agent Sexton. Just wanted to update you. Using the information from your case, we've shut down 3 more trafficking operations in 2 other states, 12 more kids going home. Thank you for being willing to fight. Benjamin replied, Thank you for finishing what I started." Then he set the phone aside and allowed himself a moment of peace. Kevin was safe, the monsters were caged, and tomorrow they would wake up and continue building their new life, one day at a time. It wasn't the ending he had imagined for his life, but it was the ending they had earned, father and son, survivors, fighters, together. And that, Benjamin reflected, was enough. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen.